Oh, come on. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, and assembled company, Louis, Ali, anyone else who's listening off Zoom, and we have a really special guest tonight, Alice. No, not Alice. Alice, of course, is the special guest, but our special guest storyteller is, we have the magnificence of Janina Vigurs. Hey. Round of applause. Louis, good to see you. You know, before you start, Louis told a story on Tuesday.
Wow.
I want a round of applause for Louis before we do anything else. Fantastic. So, and when we have a strange Scotsman he's coming in sort of ghostly, sort of hello, Donald. We'll all be together in the field in a couple of weeks.
I had trouble joining tonight. I don't know.
Oh no, it was late. It was late joining. Arlie, with the techno imps were attacking Arlie.
Oh, dear.
And it wasn't Arlie's fault either. It was
probably your fault, John.
So anyway, we're going to stop rabbiting on, and we're going to go across to Janina, who is going to tell us a story. Have you got a story for us, Janina, as it happens? Donald, if you can mute, please.
Oh, sorry.
As it happens, John, I do have a fantastic story. Are you going to stay there for the whole thing? Maybe. All right, that's okay. That's all right. I do have a story for you. So hello everybody, hello to you in Zoom, everybody, hello to people on Facebook. My name is Janina and I am a storyteller. Now normally when we want to tell a story, we might go to a bookshelf or a library and take a book, and we might read the words and look at the pictures and say, oh, what a lovely story. Well, my story's not in any books. My story's all in my head, in my brain, in my noggin, in my wonder box. And if you have a brain or a head or a noggin or a wonder box, I'd like you to get your fingers, your wiggly fingers, and we're going to tap, 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 tap. So we're going to wake our brains and our noggins and our imaginations up, because do you remember I said that I'm a storyteller? Of course you do. Of course you do remember, Louis. You've got an amazing rememberer up there. I know you have. I am a storyteller. That part is true, but not a very good one, because I can't tell stories on my own. I need help. Yeah. And if you're feeling helpful today, you can show me how helpful you're feeling by putting your finger on your nose. Oh, look at all these fingers on noses. This is fantastic. You feeling helpful? No, that's okay. That's all right. Brilliant. So you're going to help me. I'm going to help you. And together, the story's going to get told. If you don't feel helpful today, that's okay. You can just sit back and treat yourself to the luxury of listening. Yeah, you just chill out, Louis, that's fine. So this story happened way back, right at the beginning of everything. There lived a very old, very beardy, very creaky old king. This is crown. Oh, there we go. Old King knew that he wasn't going to be king for very much longer, because sadly, even in Storyland, you know and I know that nothing can actually live forever. And the king was very aware of this, that actually soon he wouldn't be around. His body would stop working.
Except from a cushion.
His heart would stop beating, his brain would stop thinking, his legs would stop walking, and he would be dead. But he really wanted to live forever. He really wanted to be around forever and ever and ever and ever and ever and ever and ever. And he thought, how can I do this? How can I help people remember who I am? How can I make sure that they don't stop talking about me after my body has disappeared and gone back into the ground? He had a bit of a think. He stroked his beard, scratched his head. What do you do when you're thinking? Show me your thinking. You eat a banana when you're thinking, do you? Yeah. He did all of those things that people do when people think. And at the end of all that thinking, he said, no, I can't possibly think of what I could do. And so he called all of his servants together and he called them all into the throne room and he sat them all down on cushions around his throne. And he said, servants, I need you to do some thinking for me. I need you to stroke your beards and scratch your heads and come up with a good idea of something that I could do to make people remember me. Something kind, something good-natured, something big-hearted, something lovely that I could do. People like talking about lovely things, don't they? Well, that's exactly what all of the servants thought, but they all nodded their heads because a servant's job is to do as a servant is asked. So the servants did. They all sat around and they stroked their beards, scratched their heads.
They won't have full beards.
They don't have full beards.
No.
No. Oh, okay. Well, some of them quite closely shaven.
No, they don't all.
Not all of them. Well, even the ones that don't have beards stroked their beards that weren't there as well. And they all had a good think about something that the king could do that would be nice and kind and generous and big-hearted. Now, something I forgot to tell you was that our king was not kind and nice and generous and big-hearted, not in the slightest, not even a tiny little bit, not even that much, nothing at all. He was as mean and as miserly and as horrible-hearted as it's possible to get. But that didn't stop him. Think of something, he said. Think of something. Come on, servants, think. They did. And eventually, one brave servant put his hand up and said, Your Majesty. He did that. That's bowing. That's what you have to do when you talk, when you address a member of royalty. That's right, you have to bow very, very, very low. If I were standing up, I would bow so that my head touched my toes. Your Majesty, he said, I have an idea. People like animals. Why don't you open up a little sanctuary for rescued, injured, poor animals? That would be kind. King said, animals? Ghastly things. Stinky and smelly. No, terrible idea. Think of something else. And so they did. They scratched their beards and they stroked their heads and they did all the thinking things that thinking people do when they're thinking of things. And eventually another brave servant put his hand up and he said, Your Majesty, I have an idea. He bowed even lower than the first guy did. Your Majesty, it's kind to do things for children. Why don't you put on an enormous party for all of the children in the kingdom and give them free ice cream? That would be nice. People would talk about that for years to come. Why don't you do that? Children, said the king. Why would I possibly want to do anything for children? They smell even worse than the animals. Terrible idea. More thinking, please. And he sat back. And they thought, and they thunk, and they thunked, and they thought, and at the end of all that thinking, he could come up with anything. And so the king had to do some for himself. He stepped up and said, Oh, useless peasants, be gone, all of you. I have an idea. Yes, I have an idea of something I could do. I should be the great, the wondrous, the known for evermore king. Was the first king to reach up and touch the moon. Yes, that is what I shall do. I shall be known as the first king to climb up and touch the moon, and everybody will talk about that forever and ever and ever. Amen. Just need to do it, which is really very simple. You follow me, we're going outside. And the first servant, the one that bowed quite low, followed him hurriedly outside. Outside the castle, day had turned to night, and the moon was high in the sky. Ah, said the king, see? It's just up there. Shouldn't take too much of a stretch of the imagination for me to get up there, should it? No. Stand back, everybody. And he went outside onto the palace lawn. Took a deep breath. Planted his 2 feet firmly on the ground and stretched his hand up. Seems to be a bit of a problem. I can't touch the moon. Goodness me. I need something to stand on, Your Majesty, your sire. Yes, that's exactly what I need. Go and fetch me something to stand on. Go, go, go. So the servant rushed inside, came back with the king's throne, placed the throne in the middle of the palace lawn. The king did something that we're not supposed to do at home. He stood on his throne, or in a chair. I don't have any thrones at home. Do you have a throne at home, Louis? No, me neither. He stood up on his special chair, his throne, and he stood on his tiptoes and he stretched. Seems to be a problem. I still can't touch the moon. Goodness me. Servant, I need something else. Something else to stand on. Go and fetch me something. Go and fetch me a cushion. Yes, go and fetch me a cushion. Yes. So the servant did. He ran off. Standing running. Grabbed the cushion, brought it outside, placed the cushion on top of the throne, and the king stood on top of the cushion, which was on top of the throne, which was on top of the palace lawn, and he stood on his tiptoes and he stretched. Oh, goodness me! Seems to be a problem. I still can't touch the moon. Goodness me. Something else, something sturdy to stand on, I think. Maybe some books. Yes, go to the palace library, fetch all the books that you possibly can carry and bring them out here to me. Chop, chop. The servant did. He ran off as fast as he could. He came all the way back with an enormous stack of books. I said, Your Majesty. He placed the moon. No, he didn't place the moon. He didn't touch the moon. He couldn't touch the moon. He placed the books on top of the cushion, which was on top of the throne, which was on top of the lawn in the middle of the palace gardens. And the king stood on the very top of all of those books. He stood on his tiptoes, and by now you know what's going to happen next. Maybe you can do it with me. He stretched. Oh no! Seems to be a problem. I still can't touch the moon. Goodness me. Whatever am I going to get? Something else. He went and grabbed all the other pieces of furniture in the castle. He went and grabbed all of the chest of drawers. He went and grabbed all of the wardrobes. He went and grabbed all of the children's high chairs that weren't being used anymore in the nursery. And he gathered them all together and dragged them and pulled them and ferried them up one by one until the wardrobe was on top of the table, which was on top of the chest of drawers, which was on top of the stack of books, which was on top of the cushion, which was on top of the throne, which was on top of the lawn, which stood in the middle of the palace gardens. The king stood on top of all of these things. He stood on his tippy toes, his very, 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 very tips of his tippy toes, and he stretched his hand up as high as he could possibly go. Oh no! The king was furious by this point. There seems to be a problem still. I still can't touch the moon. Goodness me, this will absolutely not do. Servant! Servant! He called down from on top of his high tower. Go and fetch me something else to stand on. The servant looked up and said, but your majesty, there seems to be a problem here. I'm afraid there is nothing else to stand on. You've taken all of the books. You've taken your throne. You've taken every single piece of furniture in the whole castle. What can we possibly do? There isn't anything else for you to stand on. Don't be so ridiculous, shouted the king from the top of the very, very high tower. Do I have to think of everything for myself? Useless. The servant was beginning to get quite worried, and so he looked to all the other servants for a little bit of moral support, for a bit of backup. The other servants just looked the other way. They didn't want to get involved at all. Goodness me, said the king. Absolutely useless. It's very, very simple. If you just have a little think in your little tiny brains, you'll come up with this idea as well. But what you need to do is this. Simply take the cushion out from underneath all of the books, pass it up to me, and then I will stand on the cushion. I only need a tiny little bit more and I will reach the moon. Well, the servant, who was very good at doing what he was told, but also very good at thinking, had a think. Just a little think in his very, very big brain. He went, and he realised probably what you're thinking as well, that if he was to pull that cushion out, the entire tower would who knows what would happen to the king then. He knew this really wasn't what the king wanted to hear. But what could he do? Well, he tried to do the right thing. He looked up at the top of the tower and he said, Your Majesty, you see that there is a problem. If I pull that cushion out, then I don't want to hear your excuses. Just do as I say. That's your job. Goodness me, such insolence. The servant really did like his job and he relied on it. So servant's job is to do what a servant is told. So he was just following orders. Very carefully, he took his fingers and placed it around the corners of that soft, velvety purple cushion, and he wiggled and he pulled and he wiggled and he pulled and he pulled and he wiggled and he wiggled and he pulled and until it cushion came clean away. And as it did, that entire tower, the books which were on top of the cushion, which was underneath the table, which was underneath a chest of drawers, which was underneath a child's high chair, which was underneath probably an elephant that was put in there as well, which was underneath another wardrobe, which was underneath a table, which was underneath the king, wobbled and toppled and shook and swayed and eventually hit the floor with such a thunderous roar you have never heard the likes of before. And what happened to the king? And I'm not entirely sure. What I do know is that everybody does still talk about him. Except that now they just talk about the king who didn't listen. Everything has a beginning. Everything has a middle. Nearly everything has an end. But this is the end of that story of the king who just wouldn't listen.
Thank you, Janina. And did you see that nice bowing from Louis earlier?
I did.
Magnificent
Wonderful
bow, magnificent. Louis at the moment is probably on his way to swimming. Are you on your way to swimming, Louis?
Yes, I am. Yes.
Well, we'll try and get another story in before you actually get in the pool. Then.
Okay. Yes, please. I love the story so much.
Well, okay. Janina, do you have another story?
John, I always have another story.
Well, we have time for another story.
Excellent. Excellent.
That'd be marvelous, and that'll come to about right. That'll get Louis to the swimming pool, and but he'll get one in before he actually leaps into the water because he finds it very difficult to listen while he's in the water.
Hard. It's quite hard with water in your ears, isn't it, Louis?
I'm going to stop wittering on. I'm going to leave you to tell the story.
Brilliant. What a great idea. Louis, would you like a story that has swimming in it?
Yes. Can I have you on the story?
Can you say that again, please?
Yes. Yes, please. Can I have you do the book? The story.
I'm sorry, Louis. I'm having trouble hearing what you're saying. Would you like to?
Louis would like the story, yes, please, and he would like the story now.
Oh, okay. Right. Well, let's get to it. This story also happened way, way, way back, right at the beginning of everything. And you know what? To help this story get to the end a little bit quicker, I'm going to talk a little bit faster. This story happened way, 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 way back, right at the beginning of everything. There lived a small girl, and she lived with her mum, and they lived together in a house with a pointy roof. And this house sat in the middle, as they do in these kind of stories, in the middle of a thick, dark forest with trees that stretched all the way up to the sky. Now, this house was full to the brim, full to the brim, full to the very tops of that roof with love. This little girl and her mum were so happy. They were so in love. They were so content. It was a happy, happy household. The house was always full of laughter. But just as happy and content as they were with their wonderful life in the middle of the forest, they were equally as poor. But that didn't matter. This particular morning, small girl ran down the stairs into the kitchen, flung open the cupboards to see what was for breakfast. And there wasn't much at all. Just a crust of stale bread. And in the fridge, some milk that really shouldn't have been in the fridge at all. It should be in the bin. Do you want to have a sniff? Oh, it's really quite sour. Small girl, though, was smart. She was observant. She was good at looking and noticing things around her. And when her mum came downstairs and said, "What's the problem? Why are you looking so sad?" Small girl said, "Mum, I'm sad because there's nothing for breakfast. Nothing is very nice anyway. I don't fancy cottage cheese on toast." Small girl said, "But mum, I've noticed on a bush on the way to market at the top of the hill, it's covered in hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of fat, ripe, juicy blackberries. Why don't I run to the bush, pick all the blackberries and bring them home for our breakfast?" Mum said, "That's a great idea. Off you go." And she did. To get there a little bit quicker and to help the story get to the end a little bit sooner, let's make her run. She ran. She ran all the way up the hill, and when she got to the top of the hill, there indeed was a blackberry bush full of hundreds and hundreds of fat, ripe, juicy blackberries. Well, she thought she'd better just try one. It was delicious. Oh, try one. Oh, okay. I have a small person with a plant here. The bulb came out, so it did. That's all right. One, you go and repot it. That's all right. Well, Small girl picked and picked and picked and picked and picked and picked until her hand was full. And when it was full, well, she pulled up the bottom of her skirt, made a little basket, and picked and picked and picked some more until her skirt basket was full. Then when it was, she turned around and as quickly and as carefully as she could, she ran all the way back home. And she was nearly home, nearly there, nearly at the table so she could have her delicious breakfast when she stopped because she saw somebody coming towards her. She saw on the road a tall, thin lady with lips as thin as two pieces of string and skin like the wrinkled old skin of an old winter's apple. The mysterious old lady stopped and looked her straight in the eye and said, "Excuse me. Those blackberries look incredibly juicy and sweet. I couldn't just bother you for just one fat, ripe, juicy blackberry, could I? I haven't eaten in such a long time." Little girl looked at her basket and said, "Well, yes. Here you go." She gave her a big handful. The mysterious old lady took the handful and ate them as fast as you've ever seen anything be eaten. "Oh, thank you. Here," said the little girl. "I think you need them more than I do." She gave her every single last blackberry. Oh, what dear. Oh, my goodness me. Sweet girl, you have been so kind. Thank you. To reward your kindness, I would like to give you a present. She reached inside her cloak, and as she did, the small girl thought, "A present? A present for me?" It had been years since anyone had given her a present. She started thinking about all the wonderful things that the present could be. Maybe it was a bow for her hair or a pair of shiny new shoes. She reached inside and said, "Here you go," and pulled out a large, round, black, heavy metal pot. The small girl took the pot and said, "Thank you." And as she turned round to go back home, the mysterious old lady stopped her again and said, "Excuse me, I'm sorry, I've just forgotten to tell you. This is not just any old pot. This is a magic pot. A magic pot that whenever you are hungry, all you need to say is, 'Cook, little pot, cook.' When you say those words, the moment they leave your lips, the pot will be full to the rim, full to the brim, with the warmest, creamiest, most delicious tasting porridge you have ever had." Well, this changed everything. This time, the little girl said, "Thank you," and actually meant it. "Oh, thank you." She looked at her pot and was just about to say something else when she noticed the mysterious old lady had mysteriously vanished. Well, she took her pot all the way home, which wasn't very far, so she just walked the rest of it. But she got home in about 4 steps, and as she did, she burst through the kitchen door, placed it on the table and said, "Mum, look what I got!" And her mum turned around and said, "They're not blackberries. Where are the blackberries? You said you were going to get blackberries. Oh my goodness, my girl, I'm so hungry. Goodness, what am I going to eat? What am I going to do with that? A pot. I've got nothing to cook in it. What am I going to? Oh, useless. It's all right, Mum," she said. "Don't worry, it's a magic pot." And little girl told her mum the whole story from the beginning to the end. And when she got to the end, her mum said, "A magic pot." Magic pot. There's no such thing as a magic pot, but well, if you want to believe these things, that's fine. But were there any more blackberries on that bush? "Oh yes," said little girl. I didn't pick all of them. I left some of them for the birds and the mice." "Why don't you go back to that bush and just pick a few more, eh? Just to be on the safe side." "Oh yes," said little girl. "And then we can have blackberries in our porridge when our magic pot works." "Yes, why don't you do that? Go on, off you go." So little girl did. She ran as fast as she could all the way to the top of that hill. And when she got there, she pulled out her skirt and she started to pick again. Back home, as she was waiting, Mother was curious. She listened to the story that the small girl had told her and thought, well, I don't believe it, but I'll try it. She put her face as close to the pot as she possibly could, and she said those magic words. She said, cook, little pot, cook. And as soon as the words left her mouth, bing! So the pot was full to the brim of the warmest, creamiest, most delicious tasting porridge that she had ever tried. Oh, it was good. And the perfect temperature, and the right sweetness. Oh my goodness me. Oh, she ate, and 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 she ate. I can see you're eating too, Louie. Delicious. When her belly was full, she looked at the pot and said, oh, goodness me, that was delicious. I can't possibly eat any more. Oh, I might need to go and have a little nap now. Pot carried on cooking. The porridge bubbled up to the surface, up to the rim, up to the brim, and started to dribble over the edges, slide down the sides of the pot. Oh, said Mum. Oh, don't do that. You're making a dreadful mess. Little pot, that's enough now. I've heard it. I'm full up now. You're making a mess. Oh, goodness, I'm gonna have to go and get a cloth now. Oh, God, I've got a cloth. She frantically started wiping up all the porridge dribbles from down the sides of the pots, because, you know, there's nothing worse than trying to clean up it's dried on porridge from the outside of a saucepan. It sets rock solid. It's the hardest thing in the world. And so she started cleaning and said, no, pot, that's really easy enough. You're making a terrible mess. I've got to go and rinse the cloth out. But the pot carried on cooking. It dribbled down the sides of the pot and onto the table and over the surface of the table and onto the floor. Oh, goodness me. Oh, I need to go and get the mop now, said Mum, and she hurried off to go and get the mop. And she came back with the mop and started fretting and maybe even saying some words that maybe you shouldn't be saying. On a children's storytelling session, she started mopping up and pushing around, and I don't know about you, but she was starting to get quite cross. Have you ever seen a grown-up get quite cross when they're starting to tidy something up? She was getting so cross. Goodness me, Pot, she said, oh dear, are you making such a dreadful mess? I can't keep up with this. The pot did not stop, though it carried on cooking. Porridge everywhere. It flowed out of the kitchen and into the hallway. It flowed out of the hallway and down the step and through and underneath the front door into the garden. And still the pot did not stop. No matter how hard the mother begged and pleaded with the pot, it carried on cooking. It just would not stop. Well, by this time, small girl was very proud of herself. She'd gathered up all of the rest of the blackberries, well, apart from about 10, which she left for the birds and the mice, and she carried her blackberry, precious blackberry cargo safely back down to the house. But as she got just on the other side of the hill, just at the spot where she could look over the village, spot her house and the church and her school and her little friend's house, she dropped her blackberries, because what she saw was not what she was used to seeing at all. She could see her house, she could see the church, she could see the school, she could even see the friend's house, but only the tips of the roofs, poking out from underneath a sea of porridge. Oh no, she thought. She knew exactly what had happened, and she knew exactly what she needed to do. She needed to say those magic words, and so if you remember what they were, you can say them with her. She put her hands around her mouth, and as loud as she possibly can, she shouted, "Stop, little pot, stop!" And as soon as those words left her mouth, the pot was as clean and as empty as the moment she had been given it. The kitchen wasn't, though. The house wasn't. The garden wasn't. There was still porridge absolutely everywhere. So the only thing for her to do was to roll up her sleeves, adopt the dive position, stand on the edge of the porridge and dive into the porridge. When she was inside, she swam. I think this is front crawl, isn't it, Louis? She swam, she swam, she swam all the way through the porridge, all the way back to her house. And when she got into her house, she swam into the kitchen and pulled open the drawer where all the spoons are kept. And she gathered up all of the spoons and she stuck them under one arm. And she swam with the other arm. She swam, she swam, she swam all the way outside. And she looked up and she saw her mum sat on the roof of the house. She looked up and she said, "Mum, Mum, catch!" And she threw a spoon up to her mum. And then she swam all the way to the church where she saw the vicar clinging onto the spire. And she said, "Vicar, vicar, catch!" She threw him a ladle. And she swam all the way to the school where she saw all of her school teachers sat on top of the roof. And she said, "Teacher, teacher, catch!" She threw them some teaspoons and swam all the way over to her friend's house where she said, "Friend, friend, catch!" Threw her a dessert spoon. And the only possible thing that they could do, sure you know, was to eat. And to eat, 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 and eat. But they didn't mind, because it was the warmest, creamiest, most delicious tasting porridge that they had ever had. And if you go there today, they're probably still eating, but there'll be enough for you. I can absolutely guarantee it. Everything has a beginning, everything has a middle, and nearly everything has an end. But this is the end of that story, the magic porridge pot.
Janina, that was amazing. I love that version you tell.
Thank you.
And that's and actually that's the end. That's the end of Janina's stories. And what we've got coming. So a big round of applause, I think, for Janina. Way. And we shall be in a field together with Donald next week or the week after. And so we'll be at Glastonbury and Cambridge. And at Cambridge, Norman is joining us. So and Baden is joining us on both, but at the cafe, which is what we're concerned with at the moment, the next program is Tuesday at 5 o'clock, Louis, which is Young International Tellers. And Louis is coming back and you're going to do a story again this week, are you, Louis? Or next week? You're going to do another story for us?
So
you will another week.
I
You
will.
were fantastic last week.
Yes, thank you. I am doing week after next week. Next week I'm not doing it because I don't speak the language.
Right. So but any Tuesday you're free, pop along. And so, but who's next Friday? We're up in Scotland next Friday, but not with a bearded gentleman, with Diana Pearce, who's telling us stories for children next Friday, which is fantastic. And after that, there'll be the worldwide story round on the 19th. But for now, another round of applause for Janina. and everyone who joined in, and Ali at the cafe who's been flying the magic carpet for us, and
Thank you,
Alice,
John. Thank you, Janina. Thank you, Louis. Thank you, my friends.
Alice who's got a crocodile puppet on her hand, and Norman who's looking very Norman with that disc over his head. I think Norman's got a halo. But
Yeah. Thank you, Donald. Thank you, Norman.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you,
It's
Kamal.
been such a lovely time.
thank
Nina.
you. Bye. See you next week.
See you next week. Bye-bye.
You, my friends. Thank you so much.
Bye, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.